Vintage Love. We are here with part 2 of the 1940s makeup tutorial. This time we're going to be covering the Hollywood glamour makeup, which you see before you right now on Trudy. So let's get started and I'll show you how to get it. So we're back and Trudy is fresh-faced and ready to go, back to square one. So we're going to start with skincare. And I'm going to use the Bésame Vanishing Cream to prep her skin. Vanishing Cream is part moisturizer, part primer. So this was kind of like the original primer, really. And you could use just regular moisturizer as well, but this does provide a nice base to the skin. And there was one of the videos I watched where it was literally just like, you can use, geared more towards young girls, but it was, you know, you can use Pat, they called it, which I assume is some kind of cream foundation, or Vanishing Cream and powder, which is of course what we did to you in part 1 of the video. But yeah, they were very, very adamant about skincare in a lot of these videos, which is really nice to see. You know, cleansing with cold cream and then using your Vanishing Cream. And it's really nice that Bésame brought back the Vanishing Cream too, to kind of get a sense of like what that would have been like. Because skin that's been taken care of, it just looks better, no matter what. Okay. So the Vanishing Cream is on. I'm just putting a little lip balm on. This is Paw Paw, and can be used for pretty much anything, any skin irritation. It's an amazing lip balm and burns, cuts, rashes, any skin irritation, it's the best. And next I'm going to move on to skin. So I could use Pancake for this. Pancake is something that I've shown you in another video just for Pancake makeup, and then I used it again in the 30s makeup video. So if you want to find out more about that, please go watch those videos to get an in-depth discussion about that. It gives a really beautiful matte powdery finish to the skin, which is beautiful. But because I've done it in those other 2 videos, I'm going to go ahead today and use Pan Stik by Max Factor. I got this off Amazon. I used it in the 50s video as well, and it will also create just this really beautiful creamy finish to the skin. This was invented in 1946 by Max Factor, and so it is appropriate to a 40s look. As I mentioned in the 50s video, the color range on the Pan Stik is very weird. It's not very inclusive, unfortunately, and it tends to run kind of orange and kind of pink. So just keep that in mind when you're shopping for it. I got it on Amazon. I'm not sure where else it's available. It might be more easily attainable in other countries, but for Americans, you can get this on Amazon. So I'm going to go ahead and go in there. I am going to use my fingers because that is pretty much that they would have been doing that back then. In the Ern Westmore video, definitely using his big beefy fingers to put that on, which was very fun to watch. So I'm using 2 colors blended together for Trudy's skin. And we're just going to smooth this on here. I'm just going to tap this on here. The texture of this is really, really lovely. I would love for them to expand the range of colors and get the undertone. Oh, sorry, get the undertones a little bit better if that was possible. And this came after Pan Stik, like I mentioned. This came after Pancake. Pancake was available to the public in 1938. It was invented specifically to be on film for the matte quality, and this was a reaction and was invented to correspond to the changes in film, because Max Factor was all about film makeup. So this was his answer to Technicolor and things like that and the new need. And it's a lot easier to put on. Pan Stik, if you've seen those videos, you know how quite labor-intensive Pancake is. Pan Stik is a lot easier to apply, as you can see, and it's a little more what we're used to doing, how we're used to applying our foundation.
User-friendly.
User-friendly, yes. It takes 2 minutes instead of the 15 or 20 that Pancake can take. But I do recommend checking Pancake out if you can, because it is quite fun. You can definitely apply this with a brush as well. I am just trying to do the makeup as close as possible to how they might have done it back then. And their selection of brushes would have been much more limited than we have right now. And as I mentioned, there are quite a few videos of Ern Westmore, who's another famous Hollywood makeup artist, using his very big hands and fingers to apply with his fingers. So I feel comfortable doing this with mine. Concealer actually wasn't invented till the 50s, so they really had to get all of their coverage from foundation back then. So I really want to go in there and cover what needs to be covered with a foundation. And because we are doing this more of a glamour Hollywood film application, I'm going to go, not go super heavy, but definitely give her a nice fuller coverage. That's part of the reason I wanted to do 2 parts to really get a sense of what an everyday woman would have been doing and what Hollywood makeup would have been, what a true glamorous makeup would have been, because they really are 2 separate things, especially back in those times. I think these 2 colors together work really well. I'm glad I have both of them because I think one or the other wouldn't have worked out quite as well, so this is good. So I'm just blending onto the neck here. It's always good to keep that in mind, that we don't want to be a floating head and that we really want to bring it down onto the neck. And also our neck is always going to be just a little bit lighter than our face due to the way that the sun hits us. So when you are matching your foundation in everyday life, every day, it's best to not match your foundation to your neck. It is better to match it to your forehead or your chest, depending on your coloring. I think that looks really beautiful, glorious and smooth and creamy. And next, we're going to move on to cream blush. Cream blush, this is a different way to do it than I normally would, but they would put on foundation and then the cream blush and then the powder, so that's how we're going to do it. I'm going to go back to use this Lilium Convertible Cream Color by Stila. Great color. Gently apply this. I really enjoyed kind of seeing this. I'm going by the Ern Westmore book. Again, I got the 40s version of that book, and it was the same process that they used to apply the foundation, or the same steps, I should say. So it was foundation, blush, then a ton of powder, which we'll get to in a minute, and then at them we're going to put on a little bit more of a powder, a little more powder rouge, powder blush. So I'm just going to the apples of the cheeks, just to give a little rosy glow here. They were very much into getting back to the perfect oval shape was a big deal for them back then. We mentioned this in the first part as well. There was all this talk of extensive shading, and if your face is this shape, do it this way. If your face is that way, do it this way. I'm just going to keep it to just a glow on the cheeks, because trying to shape a face with colored blush is just not a good way to do it. It's just not. So we're just, if all else fails, put the lovely flush on the cheeks. And now is the powder, and the powder is not the light dusting that we do now. I discussed this in the 50s video as well, and in part 1, powder meant powder back then. It was no joke. Don't look nervous. He really,
went to town.
It was no joke. And we mentioned in the first one too, the movie CoverGirl, in the scene where Rita Hayworth is getting her makeup done, and they literally put roughly a pound of powder on her face. It is no joke. I think part of it was as a joke, but I think that's how they did it back then. And you were saying also the Coty Airspun, the very old time powder that was on a lot of our grandma's vanities. They sold them in these huge tubs. And you're thinking, why would you need that much powder? This is why you need that much powder. Lots of powder. So I am going to be using the LeClerc Camelia powder. Another beautiful, I've used this in quite a few videos. It's just such a pretty powder. It's a really nice color, and it just goes with lots of different skin tones, and just brushes away nicely and just really gives such a beautiful finish to the skin.
Do they make different shades of it, or?
They do. They actually make a lot of like fun shades. Like they have the skin tones, but then they also have greens and purples and pinks and yellows and color. Yeah, like that one. So if you're really sallow, you could use a purple, and really red, you could use a green and things like that. So yeah, it's a great line. It's been around forever. I think they have repackaged, and I'm actually not sure if they have if they actually sell the loose powder anymore, but I think they do. I was lucky enough to get this at the Alcone sale. So we are going in, I'm going in with a powder right now, and you can see this is a hearty amount of powder. He does say, Ern Westmore does say to start underneath the eye, in the more concave part of the face, and to kind of bring that out. And this is certainly a lot of powder, no doubt, but something to think about too from the on-film Hollywood point of view is that they wanted something that would last a long time and not melt under the hot lights. So that's something to keep in mind. You think about, the makeup that they were using in the 20s, and it was, very greasy, and they were using stage makeup, and that was basically just like falling down, sliding off the skin. So they were really looking for something, innovating these products that would look better on camera and behave better during filming. And they were dealing with all these changes in film stock and colorization and things like that too. So I imagine it was probably a fairly challenging time, or somewhat challenging time, to be a makeup artist. Okay, so Trudy is powdered, and boy is she. So we're gonna go in now with the Bésame face brush, which I was able to get from when I did the 50s video, which is great. So this is what they would have used. I highly recommend you to check out the movie CoverGirl, like Trudy mentioned. It's such a good reference point, that scene where she's getting done up and getting her makeup done, and they hit her with basically half a tub of powder, and then they go in and they brush her off with a brush very similar to this. It feels lovely and luxurious on the skin, and I can imagine it would be great to use with a pancake as well.
Between the cake mascara and this brush, you might feel like a shoe rather than Rita Hayworth, but I'm sticking with Rita Hayworth.
Yeah, exactly. Look up for me again.
The cake mascara has that like shoe polish, quality to it when you get it wet.
That's true, it really is.
It feels very luxurious, I was just kidding.
So I was just taking off a little bit of the powder that was under Trudy's eyes. It's such a different way, close for me, it's just a different way to use powder than we're used to now. Like I said in the first video, like nowadays we use powder quite sparingly as makeup artists, and if we try to put this much powder on a client, we would probably get showed the door, I believe. But luckily we don't. It's okay to recreate it this way. But I really do love this kind of powdered look to the skin. I think it's very, very beautiful, and you can certainly see how this would just photograph beautifully and show up beautifully on film. I actually do want to start using this brush on my clients, though. It's so calming, I think. It just calms them down. Having a bad day, let me brush your face. Next, we're going to do eyeshadow. Eyeshadow was quite neutral in the 40s. Eyeshadow was something that got a little more, colored eyeshadow, I should say. It was something that got a little more used in the 30s, and then again in the 50s. But because of the austerity of the 40s, you really didn't see much colored eyeshadow. It was basically taupe, maybe blue, for film, or like a creamy color, but we're really just going to stick to a very neutral shade today. So I'm going to use, what color am I going to use today? I want to give a little definition to the eye, but nothing major. I think I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to use this color right here. This is the Viseart Pro Palette 1. I've used this in some other videos. This is an amazing palette, great neutral palette, cannot go wrong with this. This is pretty much the only palette you need if you just want matte colors, matte neutral colors. So the colors aren't marked, so I am going to use this one, and I'm just going to go in there right now and use that. So this is just to give a tiny bit of definition to Trudy's eye. Definitely don't want anything too crazy. I'm going to actually go the next shade deeper. If ladies at home wanted to give a little more depth to the eyelid, it was recommended to put a little Vaseline on the eyelid for a little sheen.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Every time I hear of like Vaseline, people using Vaseline, I'm just like, oh God, it just sounds so
Yeah, and then it
slidey.
would, exactly, and it would go into your eye or your
Yeah.
mascara, and it would melt it all off.
Yeah. Yeah, I read that. I did read it a few different places where, you know, you put Vaseline on your lashes and your eyebrows. I'm like, okay.
I wonder if the formula would have been any different.
I was just wondering the same thing, actually. Maybe it was a stiffer formula back then. I don't know. Okay, there we go. So you see a little depth in Trudy's eye, which I really like a lot. It's amazing what even that little bit of taupe can do. I really do love that. So the eyeshadow's done. It's subtle, but it's there, and I think you can see that difference, just like that little bit of taupe is helping to define and pop Trudy's eyes. I think the thing about 40s makeup in general is there's a subtlety to it. We're not talking about bright colors except for the lipstick. We're not talking about extreme shapes to the brows or the lips, really, even. It's really about the subtlety of the application and the colors. Back to the whole idea of the homefront military makeup, you didn't want to appear like you were trying too hard, and I think that translated into Hollywood makeup as well, to a certain extent, depending on the role the actress was playing. They wanted them to appear put together and pretty and glamorous, but still girl next door for the most part. For most roles, of course, there were the super vampy, glamorous ones, but you know, a lot of those roles back then were wife on the home front, girlfriend on the home front, trying to keep it real. So that's something just to keep in mind, even with these more glamorous applications. So next, we're going to do eyeliner. And eyeliner is one of those things that can really separate a 40s look from a 50s look. 40s, the eyeliner was super minimal. Even in Hollywood, there was no flick. 50s is the flick. So just keep that in mind. If you're going for a really authentic 40s look, don't flick the eyeliner at all. They would have used pencil. I'm going to use coffee pencil from MAC right now. Great basic brown. Unfortunately, they discontinued. I don't know why. But any brown pencil will do, or black, whatever works for you. And we're just going to go in there and get as close to the lash line as we possibly can. Because what we really want to do is just create a thickening of the lash. Down that way. So I'm just going to go in here, and we're really just trying to get as close to the lash line as we can. And then I'm going to use the brush in my hand in just a minute to just kind of smudge that out a little bit, so we can avoid any super hard lines. You could also use a flat brush and an eyeshadow to do this. Because I'm trying to keep it as close to 40s as I possibly can, I am going to be that's why I'm using a pencil right now. So we have this nice, very tight line right next to eyelashes, and now I'm going to take this tiny little brush from Hakuhodo and blend that line out just a little bit. So just very gently blending that out, just to soften it the tiniest bit. And this will make her lashes look thicker, and I'm going to be doing false lashes, so it'll help create a line for the false lashes as well. So you can already see the difference in the eye. Even that slightly subtle line on her left eye really creates that nice lash thickness and is helping the eye to pop, even though it's very subtle. This is just a great all-around trick. I mean, this is one of those, I feel like the 40s makeup look is still popular because it's just a flattering look. And who doesn't want to look rosy-cheeked and smooth-skinned and thick-lashed? So this is the eyeliner. It's done. It's subtle, but it's there, and I feel like it really kind of already helps to bring out the lashes, which I love. I always love it when the eyeliner and the eyelashes, the mascara and the lashes go on. Those are my favorite moments. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to curl Trudy's lashes. They did have eyelash curlers back then. Look over my shoulder here. This is a Troy Sirotte lash curler. Really, really good lash curler. Lash curling is a great thing to do. It really helps to open up the eyes. Next is the mascara. This is Cake Mascara. They were still using Cake Mascara. They're actually using Cake Mascara into the 50s, so they definitely would have been using that back then. This is the Bésame Cake Mascara. It comes with this little tiny brush. I've used this in all my other videos, so you guys know the drill. So we're just going to take plain old water, and I just do 2 sprays because you don't want a lot of water in Cake Mascara. You do want to keep it on the drier side, because if you think about the texture of regular mascara, of tube mascara, it's thick, it's pasty, so you don't want it watery, otherwise you're not going to do you any good. I'm going to do a little bit of mascara underneath the eye. This definitely would have been something that was not an everyday thing. It was definitely more of a Hollywood look. I think mascara on the bottom lashes is definitely one of those things that if you do it well, it can really kind of tie the whole eye makeup look together. You can definitely give some nice definition to the eyes. It's hard to get otherwise. So the mascara is on, top and bottom. I think it looks beautiful so far. And next, we can't possibly do a glamorous Hollywood look without false lashes. And false lashes back then tended to be very long and on the thinner side. It was less about the thickness and more about the length. So I'm going to use these Ardell 105 lashes that are nice and long. And I've already tested them on Trudy to make sure that I like how they look and also that they're the right width for her eye, which they are. So I don't need to cut them down, which is great. As I was saying, you should definitely always measure the width of the lash to make sure that it is the right width for the eye, to make sure you don't need to trim off any from the outside corner, because if a strip lash is too long, it will poke you in the eye and you will be miserable. So this is the Duo latex-free lash glue, which I do love. Okay, so I'm gonna pop those on. So these lashes are going on really beautifully. And Trudy is looking down instead of closing, which is exactly what you want to do when you're putting lashes on. Okay, open. Great. All right, beautiful. I'm going to pop that second pair on.
Why do you prefer the latex-free kind?
Just because of the applicator, in all honesty. This little brush makes it so much easier to put on than the tube kind. The tube kind's great. I used it for years. This is just the perfect size, and it just makes it so much easier. This kind also tends to dry a bit more clear. The traditional glue can get a little spotty, so if you use too much, you'll more likely be able to see it on the lash, but this, once it dries, it just dries really nice and clear in my experience.
I think they make a black one too, don't they?
They do? Yep, they make a black one, which is really nice. It's nice to have the option. So if you're doing a smoky eye or a deeper skin tone, you have the option of using a black, which is great. So the lashes are on, and we're going to let the glue dry and do one last step on the eyes. But for now, I'm just going to go in and do a little bit of work on the eyebrows. Eyebrows were pretty natural in the 40s. You didn't get the extreme arch and overpluckedness of the 30s, or that kind of super, super arched, very thick, dark brow of the 50s. The 40s is really about just leaning into what you already had. So I'm just going to give a tiny bit of attention to Trudy's eyebrows. Nothing crazy. I'm just going to draw in that arch a little bit more. And they really, again, I've said this before, is that they didn't really have separate eyebrow and eyebrow pencils and eyeliner pencils. So they're basically using the same pencils for both eyeliner and eyebrows. So I'm just going to go ahead and use that the MAC coffee pencil like I used for the liner, and just give her a little tiny bit more oomph, but nothing crazy. And this is very interesting to use a liner pencil as an eyebrow pencil, because this is not something that I would ever normally do, because the eyeliner pencils tend to be quite a lot softer than modern brow pencils, so it's very interesting. This really is great if you're trying to just soften up a line, especially in the brows. It really helps you do that. And I just want to get it's always good to go in and just try to do hair by hair. It's the best way to create a brow. Okay, so we're gonna just move on to, I'm gonna give her a whisper of powder rouge. I'm actually really happy with the way this rouge is showing, the cream rouge is showing through, but I just want to give her a little more color on the cheeks. So this is Bud of Roses by Julie Hewett, Los Angeles, which is another brand that really leans into the 30s, 40s, 50s Hollywood aesthetic. Okay, so we're just going to give a little more blush of color there, and turn the other way for me.
Is this color very similar to the one underneath?
It is, yeah. I think the Lilium underneath tends to be a little more a brownie, and this is a little more pink.
I like that doubling down.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, it's a really interesting trick that I would never think to do normally, but it makes me want to try it on myself with more modern products, like put the cream blush on, then put my foundation on, and then maybe a little powder blush on top of that. So next is the lipstick, which is of course super important. No one could do anything without lipstick in the 40s. We are going to be using another Bésame color, which is really beautiful, that is called Red Velvet by Bésame Cosmetics. This is a deeper red than the Victory Red that I used in part 1. And I think it's just going to look beautiful. And a note about lip shapes. Most women would have been using their natural lip shape, maybe overdrawing a tiny bit. Hollywood, they were definitely getting more into the slightly overdrawn lips. Joan Crawford is kind of the patron saint of overdrawn lips, if you will. That certainly happened, that certainly existed. Not everyone was doing that, but I'm gonna give Trudy just the tiniest bit of overdrawing on the lip, but nothing too crazy. I think the overdrawing on the lips got a little more intense in the 50s when women were expected to look less natural. So I don't want to go too overboard with it for this. So we're going to go in with a lip brush. They definitely would have been using lip brushes back then at home and on set. I think a lip brush is definitely one of those things that they were very much, probably one of the first tools they were using in terms of brushes for makeup. And I really do love playing with a lip shape. I think for the longest time I never really played with my own lip shape, and then one day I was like, oh wow, this is amazing. It is truly amazing what changing your lip shape and changing your eyebrow shape can do to your face. And I've said this before, and it bears repeating, don't feel the need to rush doing your lips or your liner. If you're doing a winged line, they both require symmetry and patience, and it is perfectly fine to take your time to do them and to use small Q-tips with makeup remover to get them perfected if you need to. It's really okay to do that. Doing lips is actually one of the hardest things to do as a makeup artist on someone else, because the symmetry can be very challenging, especially because most people's lips are a bit unsymmetrical, and everyone's eyes are, so. If you're trying to figure out symmetry while you're doing your own winged line or your own lips, it is very convenient to take a selfie of yourself and take a look at it, and it will show you the asymmetry that's going on, so then you can correct it. So it's a really handy thing to do. It's always good to take a step back, look at the whole face, look at the lips, and then you can get a better sense of what needs to be pulled up.
There's a fine line between playing the back and forth game between
the
sides.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's hard to tell when to stop.
It really, yeah, exactly. Sometimes you have to be like, I'm tapping out, I'm stepping back, this is what it is. Absolutely. Okay, so we're gonna blot the lips really fast. And do that again. Okay. Gorgeous. And I'm really liking this deeper red with the black and gold that Trudy has on, because I feel like it's really just giving that little extra bit of drama. So Trudy's lips are done. We are one step away from being done. I think she looks amazing. And the last thing I'm going to do is put some white eyeliner in the lower waterline of Trudy's eyes to make them pop. This was a very, very popular trick back then. So this is a white pencil from Makeup Forever, just a pure white. If you wanted more of a natural look, you could use more of a flesh colored, whatever that is closest to your flesh color. That will help to make the eyes whiter. This is going to give it. This is more of an extreme look to use a pure white, so that's always an option if you want something a little less aggressive.
But very time appropriate.
Very, very time appropriate. Very air appropriate. I'm just using the sponge to kind of hold Trudy's lower lid down so I have more access to her waterline here. It's just a trick I use when I'm working on other people. If you look up to the mirror when you're doing it on yourself, that should be enough. And this really does kind of bring it together now. I'm seeing it on you and it just makes it look so air appropriate. It's really amazing. So this is the completed look. We just put the white pencil in Trudy's waterline, and we have the completed 1940s glamour Hollywood look before us. I think Trudy, you look beautiful. It goes with your outfit so, so well. And thank you so much for being here and doing this with me, both parts. I really appreciate it. And I hope you at home really appreciate it and can see the difference between what an everyday lady would have done and what would have been done on a Hollywood film set. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you again, Trudy, for doing this. Trudy is at Trudy Yours on Instagram if you'd like to follow her. She has amazing style and is a beautiful person inside and out, and she will inspire you, so I highly recommend you follow her. And if you haven't already, subscribed below, please do, and follow us on Instagram at My Vintage Love Blog for much more regular updates, and we will see you with the next one. Bye.